Right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the first crime cabinet meeting in 10 months. We met in January, and this has been a very long hiatus, so it's great to see everyone again. And I'll turn it over to my co-chair, Charlie Reese, to provide a welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Charlie Reese from the Durham City Council. It is fantastic to see everybody. One of the most challenging parts of the pandemic has been not being able to see all of you on a regular basis at the Crime Cabinet. And so we're really glad we were able to get this together before the year ended, and especially before my co-chair, Ellen Reckow, leaves the County Commission. So glad to be with y'all today and look forward to our agenda.
Okay. It might be good, I don't know how we could do this, but maybe I'll run through the pictures and ask people as I see them to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Archie.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm Archie Smith, Clerk Superior Court, and it is indeed a joy to be here and to be seen.
Great to see you. Barker.
Yeah, Barker French, Board Chair at DCI.
Great. Then we have Monica Toomer, our clerk, and Tonette Amos from the City Clerk's office. They've been great support to Cabinet. Patrick, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Patrick Bonker with Morningstar Law Group, but the reason I'm here today, to quote Howard, I'm just glad to be here, I served as Secretary of the Crime Cabinet for, I guess it was 4 or 5 years back in the mid-90s. And so I'll be leading off your agenda today. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here with us, Patrick. Wanda Boone.
Dr. Wanda Boone, Together for Resilient Youth.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Mindy Solly.
I'm Mindy Solly. I'm here with PAC 3, TRI, Court Watch, and as a business owner.
Great to see you again, Mindy. Chief Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chief C.J. Davis, Chief of Police here in the city of Durham. Good to be here. Thank you.
Gudrun.
Gudrun Farmer with the Durham County Criminal Justice Resource Center.
DeWarren
Langley, citizen.
Great to have you here. Mark Anthony.
Hello, everyone. Mark Anthony Middleton, member of the Durham City Council.
Have you, John Daly.
Hi, John Daly, Police Chief, Duke University.
Thank you for being here. Deneen.
Deneen Barrier. I'm the trial court administrator with the Durham County Courthouse. I'm a mini Kathy Short. I miss her dearly, but she would bring me with her to the crime cabinet meetings. And so I am glad to be here on behalf of Judge Hudson and Judge Evans in the courts.
It's very good to have you with us, Deneen. Sheriff Burkhead.
Clarence Burkhead, Sheriff, Durham County. Good afternoon, everyone.
Glad you're with us. Wanda Page, Acting City Manager.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wanda Page. I am very happy to be here this afternoon, Interim City Manager.
Thanks for being here. Tasha.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tasha Jones-Butts. I'm the Chief Court Counselor with the Division of Juvenile Justice here in Durham. It's good to see everyone.
Great. And let's see. Jody Miller.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jody Miller, a General Manager with Durham County.
Good to see you, Jody. Ashad.
I am a reporter with the News and Observer.
Okay, nice to have you with us. Will Oakley.
Hey, it's Will Oakley, Captain Will Oakley with the Sheriff's Office. I currently serve as the School Resource Officer Supervisor.
Great to have you with us, Will. Major Butler.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Major Butler with the Durham County Sheriff's Office. I serve on the support services of the Honorable Sheriff Clarence Burkhead.
Thank you. Good to have you with us. Angel Lee. Angel? I see Wendell Davis on the call. All
That's
right.
Wendell Davis, Durham County Manager.
Great. Okay. If there's anyone else who wants to be identified as being at the meeting, please unmute yourself. I see our district attorneys on the call.
Good afternoon. This is Satana DeBerry, Durham County District Attorney. I apologize for not being on video, but I'm driving.
Okay, great to have you with us, even by voice. Anyone else?
Good afternoon. This is Celeste Kelly with Community Correction.
Great to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone again. First order of business would be approval of the January minutes. I found one word that needed to be changed and related to the clerk this morning. Does anyone have any corrections they need to offer? If not, the minutes will stand as submitted with the one correction. And again, we thank our clerks for their great work. We will now proceed to the crime cabinet creation. Patrick Biker was the governmental affairs director at the Chamber of Commerce in the late 90s. And we faced a problem. Crime was spiking in the 90s in Durham, as it was really around the country. And we came together to discuss what we should do. And I don't remember who had the idea, it might have been Patrick, to pull together people across all the sectors and get people talking and planning together. And that's what happened in 1997. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to give us a history lesson.
Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate that very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Patrick Biker, and it's a privilege to be with y'all today. There's no sense sweeping it under the rug. It was fairly embarrassing to say you were from Durham back in the early mid-90s. It was difficult to go to statewide events and say you were from Durham. We had a serious image problem due to criminal activity. And Alan's right, crime was spiking. Crime in Durham increased within the city by 29% between 1990 and 1996. It was a upward trajectory that all of us were very worried about, very concerned about, and it was hurting us in every way. We had serious difficulties from a Convention and Visitors Bureau perspective, from an economic development perspective. it was, they were tough days. Let's just face it. And so we really had the leadership. While Ellen and Howard Clement were the co-chairs of the crime cabinet, there's no doubt that former mayors Sylvia Kirchhoff and Nick Tennyson, and then also our dear friend Mary Ann Black, all were at the table at that time and said, we've got to all come together and do something to address this problem. Since, I mean, if you do the math, crime was going up by ballpark 6% every year, and it showed no sign of stopping. And so the team that we pulled together under Ellen and Howard's leadership had, Ren Bowman from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, because again, this was an image problem. Leadership from the Sheriff's Department. It was Sheriff Worth Hill and Major Wes Crabtree, who was essentially the deputy sheriff back then. Ann Denlinger, our superintendent of schools. I think it's fair to say that it was difficult for our schools to recruit new teachers because of the crime problem back then. And then, of course, we had leadership from the city manager's office and the county manager's office. Back then, it was Lamont Ewell and David Thompson. They were 100% invested and very committed to this effort. At that time, we were in between police chiefs, and Lieutenant Colonel Kent Fletcher was the interim chief, and he was at the table, along with Jim Harden was our district attorney. Of course, now he's a Superior Court judge, but back then he was our district attorney. Bill Kalkov from downtown Durham. I mean, it was very hard to recruit businesses. I shouldn't say it was hard to recruit businesses, but we had a lot of explaining to do. I mean, anybody looking to move their business to Durham would subscribe to the Herald Sun and the News and Observer. And I remember Lamont Ewell telling me after he accepted the job to come here to Durham that he started taking the local papers in Oakland, California. And after reading the local papers for a few weeks, he, was like, whoa, did I make the right choice accepting the Durham city manager position? Then, of course, we also had leadership from the Durham Housing Authority. They were very much involved because back then we were still looking at the redevelopment of Few Gardens with the Hope 6 project. And so leadership from the Housing Authority was very important. And then leadership from the business community was key. I know Mindy was at some of the meetings back in the day, and another friend who's passed was Tom Stark, and he again was spearheaded the business community's involvement with this. And so, as I mentioned, crime was going up basically 6% every year. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Gudrun Palmer, and she was absolutely, she was foundational to the crime cabinet effort, and it's hard to believe, she doesn't look much different than from 25 years ago. I can't say that, but she was absolutely part of the team, and along with probation and parole staff and folks from our social services department. It really was a holistic look at how crime is affecting our community and what are the strategies we can do to change it. So our goal back then was to reduce crime by 6% from 1997 to 2000, which was basically looking at, can we take this arc that's going up at 6% grade and change it to a 1.5 or 2% decrease. And we actually pulled that off. That was a remarkable achievement and it was because everybody worked together. It was a very collaborative environment in the spirit of fiscal responsibility. If I remember right, Ellen, our fiscal budget was 0. So we didn't have any money to spend. All we could do was come up with strategies and collaborative efforts to work across departments and agencies in order to reduce crime. And so the difference just being an armchair criminologist. Crime was much more localized back when we started the crime cabinet. The majority of the crime was happening, you could draw a box. It was essentially east of Roxborough, west of Junction Road, south of 85, and north of basically the Research Triangle Park area. That's not the situation we have today. And so I think the tasks we're facing as a community today in some regards are more difficult. But what we did do was put together efforts to address youth crime, making sure we had truancy officers. That was, talk about old school, that was old school thinking. But we really did focus on school attendance, school resource officers. I remember Sheriff Hill saying that we need to have school resource officers in every high school and every middle school. And I personally agree with that. My son went to Riverside. Ellen's kids went there too. He felt like the school resource officer was his friend. He could go ask him questions, say, or tell him he saw something. And so there was focus on youth. There was obviously a focus on using technology. It was a much different environment 20 some years ago. And the use of technology was key, I think, to making the crime rate go down in Durham. And then, of course, the interface between our social services agencies, our probation and parole folks, and law enforcement it was just paramount to have those groups talking to each other. And I think we were able to achieve that. And again, it's a situation that we still face today. You know, I certainly work with my clients at Morningstar, and we all work across our community so that when persons are released from prison, they have opportunities to succeed and do the right thing. I'll never forget, Ellen, you were probably there, but we had somebody from Central Prison come and tell us back in the 90s that if somebody was released from Central Prison and they had nowhere else to go, they would just send them to Durham. And we were like, what? You know, and so it was a real problem back then. And I think we made real progress. And again, the situations are, I don't know that they're apples to apples anymore. I really don't have any, I'm sure there's way more wisdom than I'll ever have to face the situations we're looking at now. But that's what we did 20 some years ago. And again, it's great to see Gudrun, Ellen, Archie, Mindy, you know, some of the folks that were at the table back then and really made a difference. And it was a privilege to do it. I still have, with great pride, the report that we wrote, the report of the Durham Crime Cabinet, December 11, 1997, Ellen Rackhow and Howard Clement, co-chairs. So we did great work, but we still have a lot of work ahead of us. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that folks may have. I see I've taken up the time that Ellen allotted me on the agenda. And so to quote Howard, be seen, be brief, and I already am seated, but be seen, be brief, be seated, Howard Clement. So happy to answer any questions, folks. And again, it's wonderful to be here today.
Are there any questions of Patrick?
Would you be able to share the 1997 report with us?
I could. It's a hardbound copy, so I'd have to pull it apart and scan it, which is luckily we have really good administrative staff at Morningstar. I can ask one of them to do it because it's definitely above my pay grade. But we could certainly do that. I'll email it to Ellen and she could share it with folks.
I'll check, Patrick. I have a notebook that was put together. You may have done it for Howard and me of all the minutes from the first 4 years, and it may have a loose leaf of the report. I'll look and see.
Yeah, let me know what I can do. Happy to share it.
Well, thank you so much. That would be great.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, I want to say that the first year was so intense and Patrick was so helpful. We had 7 subcommittees according to this report, and the report was done. We started in April and it was completed December 11th of that year. So a lot of work with 16 recommendations, and then we got down to the business of implementing them. So really hit the ground running. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't remember that Marcia Morey was an assistant district attorney, and she was all in that first year. We spent hours working on how to address the juvenile crime issue at that time. And Marcia was, wow, was she a trooper. I mean, it was looking at every opportunity we could have to collaborate and work together and, address the community life court and the juvenile issues that we were facing at that time.
Very good addition. And I hope she's going to join the call later.
Yeah, I hope so too. Just outstanding leadership from Marcia.
Thank you, Patrick.
Right.
So
Thank
we
you.
will move on to Gudrun Palmer. And Gudrun's the director of our Criminal Justice Resource Center. Gudrun, I can't remember if you were in with us in 1997. I looked at the minutes and your name started appearing in 1998, 1 year later. Is that true? Was that when you were hired?
I joined Durham County January 14, 1998. So I missed 1997.
Right. Well, but you're virtually almost on the ground floor, and you've been the closest thing to us, a staff, for our efforts because of your, because the Criminal Justice Resource Center is the closest to some of the work that we've done. So you've gone through and have a presentation that outlines our accomplishments, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Monica, do you mind sharing the presentation that I sent you, please? Thank you so much. So Monica, do I just say next slide, please? Is that how we will do this?
Yes, ma'am. Just let me know when to move forward.
Very good. Thank you so much. So as Ms. Recca said, I joined Durham County in January 1998. And the first crime cabinet meeting that I attended was actually in the lobby of the detention center, where the detention center had just opened, and the crime cabinet was receiving a tour, maybe. But please don't judge me, but I do have the materials and the agendas and so on going back to about 2000. So the first couple years, I had to rely on Ms. Reichau's memory and her records to go over the things that were discussed. And so, but what I put together is basically, with her help, the various topics that the crime cabinet discussed, either spearheaded, promoted, or initiated. And I'll go through it, but Ms. Recca, I will rely heavily on your memory to maybe put a little bit more context to some of those. So Monica, next slide, please. So actually, Patrick already covered all this. It was the purpose of the crime cabinet was to come up with strategies to reduce the crime at that time. Next slide, please. It was in 97, and at that time, the interagency coordination that Patrick mentioned was not the norm. It was actually, It's much more so now, but back then everything was siloed, and people probably did not talk across different disciplines very often. Next slide, please. So it was to encourage the collaboration, to come up with new initiatives. And then, Patrick, I did not know about the reduction goal of the 6% reduction goal, but it was to monitor the rate, the crime rate, and then also to come up with new and innovative ideas. And I think what you will see is a number of recommendations came out of the crime cabinet and the endorsement, and also the support for funding. Even though crime cabinet did not have any money to give out, but I think a vote from the crime cabinet to support a new initiative carried very heavily, I believe, in Durham and Durham County, as well as at the city level. Next slide, please. So these are the early times, and Patrick already mentioned the community life court that was around the housing code violations, but also I think there was the advocacy for enhancing the community policing. And I think, like I said, Patrick knew a lot more about the early years. So public housing has been a huge issue, the crime in public housing. And then I think Crime Cabinet also brought in a lot of ideas from across the country to have what other communities were doing to monitor and to tackle the issues of crime from various angles. I know Ms. Recker usually brings a lot of ideas from the NACO conferences. And so I think the technology was a heavy focus in it throughout, actually. Ms. Recker, did you want to add?
Gudrun, I can add that what you see, particularly with the creation of the Community Life Court, was we felt that by improving the quality of life, particularly in some of our lower income areas, that we could help on the crime issue. And so the Community Life Court was created because what we were finding is that housing code violations, zoning code violations, junkyards, they were getting pushed off the court docket. They weren't being addressed. By having this Community Life Court that meets one morning a month, addressing these issues, we were able to get through the cases. And actually, I found when I looked through my files that it was covered in a national magazine that we had taken this on, and it highlighted our success. This was an article in January of 2000 in Southern Cities. So we were recognized for this work.
Monica, next slide, please. So this is kind of where my memory starts kicking in. I don't have the memory that Ms. Becker has. So Project Nightlight was an initiative. Donnie Phillips was the chief court counselor, I believe, at the time. And he, with law enforcement assistant, initiated Project Nightlight, which was visiting the juvenile justice involved youth at home at night to enforce their curfews.
Yes, our sheriff's deputies usually went out with on the home visits, and that was viewed as a good thing because they were again more law enforcement going in and out of areas that were very high crime at the time. They felt it was a calming influence, that there was more eyes on the street.
A lot of focus was also on student attendance and also the, I remember Crime Cabinet looking at the time of day that certain crimes were being committed. And so a huge effort was placed on various anti-truancy efforts. I remember over the years we had truancy courts. We also had a truancy initiative. There had been discussions of a truancy drop-off center. So the anti-truancy efforts were front and center for many years, and the fact that Durham County's school attendance was one of the lowest in the state was very much highlighted.
One other thing that we did when we looked at time of day, we were seeing that after school was a problem, and merchants at Northgate Mall were complaining that crime was going up at 3 and 4 p.m. In the mall. And so we actually started the middle school after school program, a free program to try to keep our middle schoolers in a safe place between 3 and 6, because oftentimes they were latchkey kids going to empty homes.
And then Rain Bowman, who was the director, president of the Durham Visitor Bureau, right? He presented a number of recurring meetings on CPTED, the crime prevention through environmental design. And the crime cabinet spearheaded a lot of the bringing CPTED to Durham, training, promoting the building planning, the siding, the lighting, and as well as landscaping to reduce blind spots, allow better visibility. I remember law enforcement officers would be available to review a facility or somebody's house to provide suggestions about how to cut back the shrubbery, or how to have better lighting, and so I think that clearly came through crime cabinet, and there was for a long time there was an ongoing effort to bring that knowledge to the community, to discuss CPTED continuously. Monica, next slide, please. Project Safe Neighborhoods came to the crime cabinet as well, and first the crime cabinet supported the adoption of the Project Safe Neighborhoods primarily through the Durham Police Department, and then also the initial coordinator. And I think even with Jennifer Schneider, were regularly presenting on crime data, as well as all their efforts that were happening in the community. Further, the 911, oh yeah, there was a huge discussion around the confidentiality for someone who's calling 911. And so the crime cabinet supported and then helped with the passage of a statewide bill to promote the protection of individual callers that were calling into 911.
That was amazing how fast that was taken up and adopted. We got it supported by the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. I think there were other organizations that supported it, and it sailed right through. Very quick success on that one. And that was brought to us by the police department. They felt very strongly that that bill was needed.
And that it would enhance people's willingness to call 911 to report crime. Increased bonds for violent crime. This is, I believe, where the Mayor Bill Bell came to crime cabinet and recommended and asked for for crime cabinet support to go to the magistrates or go to the chief district court judge and the senior resident court judge to put an enhancement into the bond policy for crime charges. The next one, Ms. Recker, I do not remember the statewide bill to enhance protection for victims and witnesses, whether that was separate from the 911 bill.
I believe it was, and I can't right now place that one as to whether we were successful. It was brought to us as an initiative that we supported, but unless someone else on the call remembers whether it passed or not, I don't know.
You wrote that it helped with the passage, so it must have passed.
Oh, it must have passed. Okay, I guess it did pass.
All right. Monica, next slide, please. So NC Aware, that happened in 2008, and between 2008 and 2010, I know Bonker was really heavily involved with the efforts of creating NC Aware, which will give improved access to an amazing amount of information for law enforcement. Which happened at the same time as where community corrections, when where we had 2 students that were murdered by people that were on correctional supervision, which created a lot of attention for Durham. But then the crime cabinet started taking a close look at community correction and how traditionally how big the caseloads were and how many vacancies they had. And so that started a really close relationship for a while with the state Office of Community Correction, but then the chief, okay, Celeste, I'm blanking. The judicial district manager, sorry, the judicial district manager would also then become a regular member of the crime cabinet, and also periodically would report on vacancy rates and caseloads and just general data on people on supervision.
That instance with the deaths or murders of the 2 college students, one at UNC and one at Duke, involving people who were on probation in our community. Really, we were the leaders in the state in pushing for a full evaluation of community corrections. It was, and basically when Governor Perdue came into office, she committed to taking this issue on. She brought in an outside group to evaluate state probation and parole, and a lot of changes were made. And what we saw is steady improvement. But we were sending letters. There were a number of newspaper articles. I had a whole thick file that now will be at the North Carolina room of the library. But a lot of work and attention went to this. And I'm very proud because I think we have a much better community corrections situation. The number of absconders were people they couldn't locate was, I think it was just under 800 at the time that these 2 murders occurred. And then we monitored it over time, and now it's down, much, much lower, usually at 100 or less. So it's way better than it was in 2008.
Another of the frequent conversations was the underfunding of the North Carolina courts and the state crime lab. And I know Judge Morey was often at and all the court officials, the district attorney's office, the judges, Archie Smith, talked often about the funding and the staffing, how different Durham was compared to Wake County and some other counties. And so the Crime Cabinet numerous times advocated to the state for more resources for the courts and the state crime lab. Monica, next slide, please. And then I think in it's I'm not quite in the right order as far as time frame. I was trying to put the categories together a little bit more, but the PreTrial Services was created in 2005, and the Crime Cabinet was early on, for one, promoted the development because there were some community groups that had come to Crime Cabinet to present on pretrial. And so the Crime Cabinet set up a subcommittee, worked through it for probably about a year to look at data and then also look at best practices and then supported the funding in the creation of PreTrial Services. The Crime Cabinet also was heavily involved in, and our county manager was one of the staff that was overseeing the initial gang assessment back in I think 2008 or 7. That came out of the Durham Police Department, and then in partnership with the Sheriff's Office, it was decided to have Dr. Weissel and Buddy Howell do the first gang assessment for Durham, and then when that was completed, one of the recommendations was the implementation of the city-county gang reduction strategy. So the Crime Cabinet early on kind of supported the gang assessment, but then also supported the recommendations that came out of that assessment. The next one, the court tools, is something that Ms. Recker worked very closely with Kathy Stewart on. And I remember some of the presentations from Kathy Stewart, but I don't know much about the behind the scenes work that happened there. But I know Kathy Stewart would come to Crime Cabinet and present some really amazing information to look at court outcomes.
Right. That came out of the fact that there was some concern that cases were not proceeding efficiently through the court system. We were hearing that. And so the Crime Cabinet asked for a tracking system, and Kathy came up with one, and we would get an annual report. So that was a good thing for us to see and make sure that things were flowing through the court system as efficiently as possible.
I don't know whether the court tool still exists today. I think Deneen had a conference call at 12:30, so she may not be there anymore. So Archie, you still get that?
Court tools still exist in terms of presentations, so on and so forth. I haven't seen it lately, but that was one of the items I was going to discuss.
Okay.
When my moment at the podium came.
All right, very good. Monica, let me move on then, please. Oh yeah, for many sessions we had discussions on the warrant service and the room full of unserved warrants, and so the Crime Cabinet in collaboration with city manager's office, county manager, the sheriff's office, identified funding for the creation of a warrant control squad, and then also eventually had an actual room and to have all the warrants and then also, I think, digitize them, I think, or catalog them so they could be found easier, and then also just to work through all these warrants. Numerous times, Crime Cabinet explored the creation of a local forensics lab. We had various presentations from, I know from Wake County. We had individuals go to Wake County to look at the lab there because, you know, one of the reasons we heard over and over and over about the time for resolving cases in court was that it took so long to get the results back from the crime lab. Crime Cabinet continuously looked at reentry services, supported the local reentry council creation. Earlier on, the reentry services for Durham County in general, and then also was open to receive a presentation and then lay support for the circles of supporting accountability for sex offenders. Sex offenders is typically a topic that nobody wants to touch. So Crime Cabinet actually stepped out of its comfort zone and discussed serving sex offenders with compassion rather than just monitoring and law and order. Monica, next one, please. Crisis intervention team, CIT, jail diversion, met much discussion around, that's when we started going into the Stepping Up initiative and trying to identify 5 ways to keep people out of detention and serve them better through diversion options. Here you have the warrant control system again, and how this huge backlog that the boxes and boxes and boxes. I think the clerk's office was heavily involved in that too. Ban the box. That's where the county and the city government decided to remove the box for you know, where people had to check if they had been convicted of a crime that carried a fine or a fee of more than $50. I don't, but you know, there was this question: have you been convicted of a crime? So the county and the city removed that. I know we had individuals coming to speak to Crime Cabinet, and Crime Cabinet supported that from the beginning, and then encouraged both governments to remove that box.
I was reminded by Tonette from the city clerk's office of the fact that actually we had a very emotional meeting where former county manager reflected on the fact that his father, who had a brush with the law and was imprisoned, had such a tough time getting a job when he came out. So we really took that one on. It was very quick action on getting that box removed from the employment applications.
Next slide, please, Monica. Yeah, obviously Judge Morey, back then, Judge Morey came and talked a lot about the misdemeanor diversion and raising the age. And then once the misdemeanor diversion program was created, and discussion was to expand it to beyond the age of 18 or 17, Crime Cabinet supported that as well. There were numerous discussions on school suspension, the school to prison pipeline, and creating and developing positive alternatives and options so kids would not be suspended out of school, but would be able to stay in school. That's when schools came several times, and then other community agencies also presenting options. Next slide, please. Crime Cabinet also supported the creation of the mental health court, and we also had several discussions and presentations on the mental health services in our county detention center. And then one of the more recent ones that is being discussed nationwide right now is the court fines and fees. And Judge Morris was leading this and bringing this to the Crime Cabinet and highlighting the inequities for people that are unable to pay the fines and the fees and the consequences for that. And there was, again, one of the subcommittees or a small group met several times to look into the court fines and fees. Unfortunately, that one is not resolved yet, but Crime Cabinet still highlighted the need to further look into this. And I believe that is it. And I apologize for stepping over the 20 minutes, but there were so many things that Crime Cabinet discussed. I just couldn't fit it in. Sorry.
Well, thank you so much, Gudrun, and I'm partially responsible for you running over since I reflected perhaps a little too much. So, but we will move on, and that's a great overview. And it was amazing when, as I say, I have a whole drawer in a filing cabinet of the files that are now at the library, but we did do a lot of work. I can and generated a lot of paper. So moving right along, I'm going to ask our police chief, CJ Davis, to provide some reflections. She became chief about a little over 4 years ago and became a very regular member of the Crime Cabinet. And I was just struck, Chief, when I saw your fall, the minutes of your fall 2019 presentation just about a year ago on gun violence in the community, because I think you foreshadows what's happening now. Chief. Is the chief still on the call?
I'm still here. I'm sorry. I was on mute. I didn't know it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ellen, and co-chair Charlie Reese. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to just share a few reflections of my experience and discussions during Crime Cabinet meetings. So as you said, early on in my tenure as police chief, I found the Crime Cabinet meetings to be quite informative and beneficial. As a new member of leadership in the city, these meetings quickly got me up to speed, on the community work that was already underway, and introduced me to many of the key leaders and organizers in the city and in the county. And I must say that these meetings have served as a very effective platform to explore and maximize local resources and the expertise to introduce solutions for a variety of the community problems that we talked about, at our meetings. And over the last few years, I found the members of this group to be highly knowledgeable, which was also enlightening, during the meetings, just listening to everybody around the table in their respective fields. And they were very dedicated to improving city and county services, while enhancing the quality of life for our citizens. And that's what we all ultimately strive for. We've engaged in some robust discussions while tackling some very complex issues head on. Our meetings have been an excellent forum, I think, for sharing research, data, and analytics related to a variety of public safety issues. And I personally have had the opportunity to update members of this group and the public on the operational challenges facing the Durham Police Department and the structural enhancements that have taken place in recent years, at least in my tenure. we've openly discussed crime trends in our community, resources and strategies to address these issues. And in a collective effort, we've introduced and explored a variety of prevention models. So the input that has been provided from everybody around the table and even community members, I think has just really helped in the whole public safety realm. Our group has supported recommendations to foster stronger relationships of mutual trust between our department and the communities that we serve on a daily basis, especially in today's climate. We know that achieving community trust is critical to maintaining public safety and effective policing. We've had some rather transparent and robust conversations that span a myriad of topics, hoping to inevitably improve systems that oftentimes have an adverse and disparate impact on the most vulnerable communities, those communities that are impoverished and communities of color. Particularly interesting and beneficial, I thought, is when we've taken time in our meetings to discuss root causes, the contributing factors, not just the outcomes, but the contributing factors, those environmental conditions that prohibit healthy youth development, the ill effects of environments that promote substance abuse, crime, truancy, and other negative consequences. That we have had some very good discussions, and folks at the table, I'm sure, will add to some of the comments that I'm making. And as I wrap up, I do want to say that one unique characteristic of the Durham Crime Cabinet's work is that it has been inclusive, transparent, empowering our community organizations to have input and become co-producers of public safety initiatives. And I think that has been very positive. Though this is, I think, the last meeting I think I heard for this group, I think it's important to sustain collaborative problem solving and community engagement from a collective standpoint, particularly as we tackle the effects of coronavirus. Work centered around racial equity. I also sit on the North Carolina Racial Equity Task Force as well. I didn't have to be at that meeting today, but there's some very, very good work that's being done, and I'm sure it will be shared in some form. And also with police reform and spikes in violent crime that has been mentioned. And with that said, the issues that negatively impact our community can only be resolved through the coordination of multiple resources in the county and the city in efficient and effective ways. So it's been a pleasure to serve alongside the dedicated members of the Crime Cabinet under the leadership of Commissioner Reckow and recently Councilmember Reese. On behalf of our department, the men and women of the Durham Police Department, we wish everyone the best. And Ellen, absolutely to you, as I think you're about to retire. We appreciate the support that you have provided over the years that I have known you, and wish you the best in the next chapter of your life. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chief. And as I say, I really appreciated your very reliable attendance and contributions to the cabinet's work during your tenure. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now go to our clerk of court, Archie Smith, for some reflections.
Thank you very much, Ellen. It is with some mixed emotions that I talk with you today. Just as a thought, think of Durham now with the crime cabinet. Think of what Durham could have been turned out as and be as without a crime cabinet. I remember when I was applying for my job as clerk of court at the turn of the century, I would go to various organizations, forums, meetings, or whatever. And there was a petite brunette woman that I saw everywhere I went. And she was as busy as I could be, and I discovered her name was Ellen Reckow. And I finally said to her, because everywhere I went, there she was. If there was two people together in a meeting, there she was. It was Ellen Reckow. And I can remember remarking to her one time, I said, Ms. Rickhow, you've got to be the busiest county commissioner we've got. I was right then, I'm right now, and I'm truly going to miss you. But as I look at the crime cabinet and I think about it, I can point out Patrick Biker and Gudrun Palmer have done a remarkable job of giving the historical narrative of the many accomplishments of the crime cabinet. The word accomplishments is key here. Unlike many organizations where people get together, they discuss things, they wring their hands, the crime cabinet did and does more than talk it, they walk it. I can remember Chief Magistrate Chet Dobies, who incidentally prior to that had been the chief deputy for the Durham County Sheriff's Office, and something most folks may not remember, at one time he was acting sheriff for Durham County, was distressed because all of these warrants were scattered. Police officers bring someone in, they thought that someone had a warrant against them. There was no way of tracking it. There was no way of getting it to it. The police officer would have to stay. The folks were discommoded. What to do? Well, the crime cabinet got behind it. And the crime cabinet did more than talk about it. The crime cabinet identified with Chief Magistrate Doby's problem, went and found the resources, the people, the money, and the space to cure that problem. Absent the crime cabinet and the folks in the crime cabinet putting the push on that, it more likely than not would have occurred. And as a result, our system and our citizens and our law enforcement had a tangible and real benefit. I can remember after I'd been clerk for a few years that the clerk's office was swamped. For those of you who know this is going to be old history, but for those of you who may not be acquainted with this, there's the state and then there's the local community. And within our court community, the county owns the courthouse building. The state is its tenant. And the two didn't always mesh. We were desperately short of the people that we needed to do the clerk's work. The clerks were in the kitchen making the sausage, and everyone else thought it was supposed to be on the plate, but it was getting more and more difficult to get out there. The crime cabinet heard our plea. The crime cabinet got behind the clerk's office. The crime cabinet went to the county and the city, as it has with the DA's office and other divisions of our judicial system, and saw to it that we had contract employees who later became full-time employees of the state to fill that need. Without the crime cabinet, this would not have happened. The notion of measurement, Gudrun has spoken about court tools. It's hard to capture smoke. It's hard to measure smoke. We can talk about things about what we would like things to be, how we would like them to be, but how do you know if you're making progress without measurement? The crime cabinet espoused measurement. Kathy Shewart, our trial court administrator, used court tools, which was promulgated out by the National Center of Courts out of Mariposa County, and took those tools and we started using them. And we now have a real way to measure progress on all the different things before that we did not know we could even measure. Time from arrest, time to trial, how long has it been awaiting? All of these things can be measured, but they hadn't been before because we didn't know they needed to. We didn't know if they could contribute anything, but they do, and they have, and they are. Once again, that's the crime cabinet. Judges sitting on a bench. A person appears before them. What is their past record? Well, the DA didn't have it. He just knew what they were charged with most of the time. Defense lawyer had a good notion, but it wasn't in something he wanted to wave the banner on too much. So a judge is supposed to make a decision as to what kind of release tool to use, how much bond or a bond at all. That is when we started having the pretrial, the gathering together of the defendant's records so that the judge could have a checklist to go by. The judge did not have that before. That was pretrial. That became Gudrun Palmer. And then the judge had all the information here she should have always had, but never had, and would not have had, but for the crime cabinet. And that pretrial program, the PreTrial Services, did such an excellent job that the PreTrial Services Agency was looked at to provide and supply the needs, the ends to the needs we had for a lot of different things. Now it's the Criminal Justice Resource Center. And we're lucky enough to have Gudrun Palmer at the head of it. Which, by the way, I've got to tell y'all something I discovered. Gudrun, I've told you about this. Did y'all know that there's a brand of chocolate called Gudrun? You didn't know that, did you? That's what I'm here for today, to inform you, to educate you to these things you need to know. So warrant repository, measurement, extra clerks of court, pretrial, Criminal Justice Resource Center. All of these things are practical things, are needed things that the crime cabinet pushed and accomplished and did. And as a result of it, our system works that much better. But without the crime cabinet, these things would not have occurred. That's why I come back to what I was saying earlier. Imagine a Durham without a crime cabinet. Crime cabinet has made this kind of difference. For so many years, I was able to attend on a very regular basis. Then my duties as the president of the clerks conference and then committees, and they would conflict. And I had to do the things that I had to do for the clerks across the state. So that interfered with my crime cabinet attendance. But the crime cabinet has been something I've looked forward to going to every time I've ever attended. I would learn something, I would see something, I would see people I like. And to top it all off, the crime cabinet covered all the bases. Where else are you going to go? Learn about things that are going on in your community. Discuss how can we cure problems and do it. And do it. And get a really nice lunch and a good cookie. I can't think of any other organization like that. So when I look across this screen sitting in my kitchen of my house and I see my friends Gudrun, Barker, Ellen, I can't help but feel a little nostalgic and think what a rich history of accomplishment and benefit to Durham that the crime cabinet has been. And Ellen, it's a sad day that you've found time to finally say, I'm going to spend more time with you, kid. I'm going to do more different things. But our community and our lives have been improved and enriched by the crime cabinet. And for that, I want to thank you and everyone else on this screen today.
Thank you, Archie. That was a great testimonial, and really Gudrun brushed over, but PreTrial Services, I'm glad you highlighted that, because every judge has told me that that information that our staff puts together for first appearance is like gold. It helps them out so much. So thank you. All right, we are moving on. And Judge Maris, are you on the call now? I heard you had trouble getting on. Are you on?
I am on. Now I'm off mute.
Oh, great. All right, you'll be up in a few minutes.
Okay, great.
All right, great. Good seeing you.
Same.
We're going to turn things over to our Chief Court Counselor, Tasha Butts, who has been such a great contributor to Crime Cabinet over the years and brings us statistics about how juvenile crime's going, was an advocate for raising the age, etc. So Tasha.
Thank you, Commissioner Rakow. And it's great to see all of the Crime Cabinet members. I didn't realize it's been 10 months since we've been together, but it has been a while. I do thank you for this. Sorry about that. Thank you for the opportunity to just give a few reflections as it relates to the Crime Cabinet and the impact that this team has had on juvenile justice. Someone wants to call me. No one's been calling me the whole time. Sorry. But I remember when I first came to Durham, when I first received this job back in 2013. At that time, I wasn't residing in Durham yet, but I was working here. And I remember Commissioner Reckhow reaching out to me and introducing herself to me. She was probably one of the first commissioners that I think that I had met when I first came. And she shared with me about the Crime Cabinet and what everyone did on the cabinet and how she really wanted me to be a part of this team and share some additional insight as it relates to juvenile justice. And I think since then, I've been actively attending. And if I was not able to attend, I would make sure I had someone to come on my behalf because I felt that this cabinet was just that important. As it relates to what we did here in juvenile justice, but also what was happening in our community. So, Commissioner, I thank you for planting the seed, but also welcoming me to the team when I first came. So, a lot of people have shared about Crime Cabinet and all the things that is done since it's in existence, but I just wanted to sort of just touch and highlight a few things. It's hard to go after Archie because, you know, we all know how Archie is, but I'm going to share a few points that I just wanted to highlight as it relates to the support that this Crime Cabinet has had with juvenile justice. One of the primary goals of this cabinet was to encourage collaboration. And I will say, not being from Durham originally, but also coming in during the time that juvenile justice was sort of spiking throughout the state. It was very helpful for me as a new chief to be able to collaborate with everyone that's on this call, learn where we needed to build those relationships, resources were coming from. So at that time, I know that we had sort of transitioned with they talked about the Nightlight program, but when I first came, that was one of the huge programs that were very beneficial to our court counsels at the time. We had a high number of juveniles that had secure custody, outstanding secure custody orders. And not only would they check curfews, but they will also assist the court counsels with serving those secure custody orders. We try to do a lot of things differently when I first got here. One was figuring out how we can reduce those secure custody orders that we had, but more importantly, how we can educate the community of the great resources that we had available for youth and families here in Durham. Crime Cabinet was a big support of that. So during the time that I came on board and started presenting, one of the things that we had a high number of juvenile complaints that were being filed throughout the community. So through that collaboration with the people that's on this call, but also others, my staff and I actually started doing training, educating, even to this task force here, the cabinet, just understanding and doing presentations of the structure of the juvenile justice process as a whole, and also sort of introducing the North Carolina Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, where we work directly with our youth, educating this task force of those programs and services that we had here in Durham that you could refer youth to in lieu of filing charges through our office. I think it was a myth back then. In order to get child help, you had to charge them and send them to juvenile justice. And, you know, we wanted the community to know that, no, it's all about youth, and we want to be able to educate everyone that's involved with them to learn how to do referrals to programs and services. Some of the things that during that time, because of the support of the Crime Cabinet, as it relates to advocating for raise the age, but also our SROs in our schools. That was a huge number of complaints that were being filed throughout the state. We jumped on the bandwagon and we started educating and building partnerships and relationships with our SROs. And as a result of that, we here in Durham, and this is something to be extremely proud of, especially when we talk about the reason why we started this crime cabinet, because of the high rate of crime that was happening. Based upon the partnerships that we had developed and the training and the resources that we were educating our law enforcement officers with, we were able to see a 56% decrease in complaints being filed in our juvenile justice system. In turn, the school-based offenses that we were receiving had an 80% reduction of school-based offenses being filed in our office. And that's something that we as a community should be commended on. The state rate, I think at one point, I think that the state rate was like over 40%, maybe 40, 41%. And the Durham County rate as it relates to school-based offenses was 37%. We had the lowest school-based offense complaints being filed in the whole state of North Carolina. So when we talk about the positive things that happens in Durham, this is one of those things based upon the collaboration that we have from teams and committees such as the Crime Cabinet. Some of the other things that we end up having or presenting to this cabinet was the racial equity, racial and ethnic disparity, which was now red. It used to be our DMC. We had some state level representatives from juvenile justice to come to present to this board about what is happening statewide, but more importantly, highlighting the great numbers as it relates to juvenile crime, juvenile complaints being received in our office, our school-based offenses. One of the areas that we still do need to work on is that DMC red area, the disproportionate minority contact that we have, because most of the complaints that we receive are of youth of color. But again, just the support of this team as it relates to the new initiatives that we have with juvenile justice, as it relates to reducing crime, reducing complaints being filed, educating our community with resources that are available. We're just definitely grateful and delighted to be a part of this team. And I know we sort of talked about this earlier, but I am sort of sad to see it go because I think it really helped build what we have here in juvenile justice as the positive trends with juvenile justice. So I thank you again, Commissioner. You definitely will be missed. But again, thank you for bringing juvenile justice more involved with this team, and hopefully the information that we provided was beneficial to all.
Thank you, Tasha. And you're absolutely right. I remember your reports and the trend line going down on juvenile complaints. So that's a testimony to your great work and your leadership as our chief court counselor. So thank you. We will now move on to Dr. Wanda Boone with TRI, who's been such an advocate for prevention programs and reducing out-of-school suspensions, and is part of the team that's helped to keep our juvenile numbers down.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy and sad at the same time to be here. And I'm so glad that Tasha said what she said, because those among us that don't have the historical knowledge of where we have been don't really understand how far we've come. And so I've used the information that I've gleaned from the crime cabinet to help educate folks in the community about the reality of what's going on and where we still need more support. So Tri-Coalition members reach 8,000 people a month. And so those are the numbers of people that we reach out to through coalition members like Mindy Soley. And though I may be the face, please understand that there are lots and lots and lots of people that carry the message. I became involved with the City County Violence Prevention Committee with Howard Clement and Mr. Harold Chestnut. So that's been a really long time ago. And then that group was folded into Crime Cabinet. So I became interested even more so when I read Buddy Howell's report on gang violence, not so much about the piece of, you know, how many this and that and the statistics, but the prevention recommendations that he made. And I said, wow, well, this is, you know, this is all about me and about prevention. So I'm probably best known for my passionate presentations at Crime Cabinet, and I make no apologies for those. But, you know, my concern is, and, you know, I think all of us, is prevention, prevention, prevention. So I'm a member of the North Carolina Adverse Childhood Experiences Advisory Board. And I would just like to say that the focus should be, and perhaps more so be, on the built community, social determinants of health, and trauma due to adverse experience and or racism, and that we have to increase the resilience not only of our young people in terms of prevention, but, you know, adults too, especially during this time of COVID, when more people are behaving in risky ways than at other times. And so several strategies were introduced and heard during the Crime Cabinet meetings, and some of them were implemented through the community coalition. But what I appreciate most is that even though I am a community member, which should be at the top, yes, that my voice was always heard, and the initiatives that I suggested were given the respect that I have found less openness to in other situations. So thank you so much. You know, I'll miss you. We've talked about our children, our grandchildren. You're retiring first, so you have that. But I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda, and we appreciate all your work. Now, trauma and resilience are top of mind, but you were path-breaking, talking about it much long ago. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now go to Judge Amanda Maris, who has been working with the Crime Cabinet for many years, started out with us when she was working in the public defender's office and often stood up, and I remember there'd be a presentation and then Amanda would stand up and point out a possible approach that wasn't covered or make a very salient point. And I thought, oh, it's so good having her voice in the room. So Judge Maris, she's providing a lot of leadership on the whole issue of fines and fees, started out working with us and now is working on a city initiative. And Amanda, I'll turn it over to you to maybe fill us in on your latest work.
Great. Hi, everybody. If you can't hear me, then tell me. I'm sure you can, judging by your smiles. I am in my office and I don't have a fun virtual background like Charlie there. So forgive me. I do have my cup that I'll share with you. This is what I'm here for, to show you my coffee cup. This is what gets me through every day, living cup to cup. All right. Well, I'm happy to be here. And, you know, the Crime Cabinet has been around so long, predated me being in the justice system. And Ellen's right. I started coming as a representative for the public defender's office for Mr. Campbell, and you know, characteristic to my participation in most things. If there was something that needed to be said, I said it. And everyone here that knows me knows that's what I do. Now that's been tempered a little bit now that I'm a judge, but that doesn't mean that we can't be transformative in our traditional roles in the court system. And who to better support that notion than the next speaker, Representative Morey, who certainly has always taken that role when she was here in the court system. And so what happened in terms of fines and fees in the crime cabinet is that the legislature was sort of tweaking around with our statutes on court costs and increasingly making it more and more difficult for judges to consider people's ability to pay. And specifically, there's a statute 7A304, I think, in 2011 that said that judges could only waive these court costs and fines for, quote, just cause. And so there was sort of this evolution that I won't bore you with because it's late in terms of many iterations of that statute, and where layers were added to make it harder and harder for judges to know what they could do if they thought that they didn't want to just implement this flat fee or fine without any consideration for someone's ability to pay. And that's exactly what was happening when the statute was created. First, people didn't know what just cause was, and I know that Representative Morey can speak to this, what happened in the legislature, but in 2014, the General Assembly started keeping a record of all the judges, and literally you could put in a judge's name and see how much fees and fines they had remitted. And I know when I became a new judge, it was still there, and I actually took pride in seeing the number next to my name because, you know, hey, I don't care if you're watching, we're going to do the right thing here. But plenty of people did. And when all these changes were happening, especially in 2017, was a major change in which the Appropriations Act said that this new layer, that before we could remit fees and fines, even if we had just cause to do it, we couldn't do it before we notified every single person or entity that was going to get a cut of this money from the legislature. And so that was the piece that Ellen and others in the Crime Cabinet said, what does this mean? You know, can ask me if I would participate in a task force in the Crime Cabinet. And we did organize and met to talk about it. We had someone come, Jamie Markton from the School of Government, who is an expert on fees and fines, break down all the nuances. And ultimately this group, and I reported back to the group, but this group has always been supportive of doing the right thing and not being intimidated by what any particular persuasion, political persuasion or perspective has to say, but doing what the law requires. And notwithstanding what this particular statute said, case law said that we always had to consider the ability to pay. And so we transmitted through Jamie Markham. He had recently published a bulletin on all the types of fees and fines that broke down all the statutes. And we shared that with the judges here, and I participated in sharing that and encouraging other judges across the state to be a part of this. And Jamie Markham spread this bulletin around the state. And so ultimately, it was just a project that we looked at here. Now, what does that translated to in Durham? It's just a spirit of this idea. And when I helped found the DEAR program, Durham Expunction and Restoration Program, which was fully funded by the city of Durham and still is supported by the city of Durham. And thank you to all the council members here in the group who voted for it. And the county and through CGRC and Goodrin gave free space in the courthouse for the program. And what this program does, it is offers free legal services on expunctions, and also it helped over 14,000 people in the past 2 years remit over $2.7 million in unpaid traffic tickets. So going directly to the fees and fines. And what happened is the DEAR program prepared countless motions to remit these fees and fines. The DA's office supported these motions and put them forward to the court and traffic court. And our district court judges, including myself, heard these motions, and we waived these fees and fines so that over 14,000 people with cases in Durham, presumably Durham residents, or at one point Durham residents, were able to apply to get their licenses back. So that's the result of the spirit of judges here in Durham, court actors, government actors, and community actors saying, we have to look at the person, we have to look at what someone has the ability to do and make sure that socioeconomic status is not preventing people from thriving. And so there is my long history for you, where it came from. And I thank the Crime Cabinet for always being willing to stand behind the right position and support that.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for that update, and thank you for your work. You've really been passionate on this issue, and it really is an equity issue. So I appreciate the progress that we've made, and I hope we can continue to make progress on that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone here that's been a part of it.
And it's so great seeing you. It's been a long time. So
I know I'm in the dark here under a lamp on my desk. So you can't see me very well.
Okay. And we will finish up now with Representative Marcia Morey. And it's all right, I guess, to call you Marcia. Marcia has been a champion of all the best things that we worked on this cabinet. But she was the key advocate for raising the age, and Durham ended up being the leader in the state. I don't believe Commissioner Howerton's on the call, but if she is, she would attest to the fact that Durham was the instigator of getting all the counties to support raising the age. She brought the misdemeanor diversion program to us. She's been a huge advocate for the court resources when she was chief district court judge, and we advocated for that. And I could go on and on, but it's so good to have Representative Morey with us, and I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Ellen, and everyone knows I'm nothing other than Marcia. I wish everyone had their camera on. It's just fun to see each other. And, you know, hey, Patrick originally on this, I mean, thinking back to when Howard Clement would come in and sit next to Ellen, you know, and we would start that good cookie and sandwich, Archie, right? But, you know, everyone has said everything. The resources, but more than resources and looking at problems and getting solutions are our relationships. Mindy, good to see you. You know, and we were so diverse. I mean, as Wanda said, it was citizens, it was city, it was county, it was courts, it was advocates, it was juveniles, it's adults. And we all had a different perspective. And, you know, right now, I wish I never would have left the courthouse, because I just fell in love with all of you who I was able to work with. Durham is the envy of many other counties. When, you know, we talk about criminal justice reform, and, you know, I talk about Goodrin and what the Criminal Justice Resource Center offers us. You know, we were the only county that had 3 drug courts running at the same time, and then trying to be more and more innovative. We were always pushing ahead. And the Crime Cabinet is a big reason why we could do that, because we would all come together. And I consider all of you friends. And we spent many hours in the county commissioner's room, listening to presentations, going through spreadsheets. John, you were there always representing, you know, Duke. So we all came and we all took part. And I just thank you. I got on late because I'm on a state criminal justice racial equity task force with Chief Davis, who's providing fabulous leadership. So I didn't hear. I hope this is honoring Ellen for her vision for this crime cabinet, but it's going on, and that Charlie's going to take it, or whoever's going to take it. It's only successful if it keeps moving forward. So I just really, really love seeing you all, Doran, seeing you and all your work with JCPC and Tasha, and just a real delight. And thank you, I miss you. And when you have sandwiches again, let me know, I'll come by.
Thank you, Marcia, for closing us out on a very positive note. I really appreciate it, and your service to the community continues as our fearless representative in Raleigh, and just keep fighting the good fight. I know you will. So now we're at closing comments, and I'm going to turn over to Charlie in a minute. I just want to say that I appreciate everyone's testimonials and history. We have done some tremendous work together, and I really want to emphasize together. It really was the team. And but Charlie and I have talked, we may need a reboot in some way. There also is a new group on the horizon, the Safety and Wellness Task Force. And so there may just need to be some refocus or just conversation as to what happens next. And given that Charlie will be around and I won't, I thought it would be best maybe for Charlie to provide some thoughts on what he sees going forward. And so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Ellen. Before I get into that, I just wanted to say on a personal note how much I have appreciated your partnership as co-chairs of the Durham Crime Cabinet during my time on the City Council. I have learned so much from you, not just about the substance of the work that we can do to make our communities safer, but also how to focus and do the incredible amount of work that you're able to do. It's not easy to be as prepared as you are. I still haven't managed it yet, but I'm not done on this job yet, so maybe I'll get there. But I just wanted to say how much all of us who serve with you appreciate the example that you set in terms of how to do this job the right way with focus and integrity and real energy and passion. And it's the model that I try to use to figure out how to do this job every single day. So thank you, Ellen, so much. I think I share a common thought with all of us on the call and many folks in the community when I say it's hard to imagine the Durham Crime Cabinet without Commissioner Ellen Reckow as the chair. But we're going to have to imagine that together. I don't know what the Durham Crime Cabinet will look like going forward. Part of that will be determined by the new members of the Crime Cabinet that are appointed after the next county commission is sworn into office next month. So my first order of business over the next couple of months will be to talk to them, talk to obviously my colleague and partner in fighting crime, Durham City Council member Mark Anthony Middleton, and also with the new members of the Crime Cabinet from the county to kind of take a look at the landscape of so many organizations, groups, commissions that have sprung up since the innovative idea to start the Durham Crime Cabinet those many years ago. And I think since then, we now have a really broad and vibrant landscape of different organizations that all have an important role to play. My own personal bias is that the Durham Crime Cabinet still has a role to play, but I think it is incumbent on all of us to take a look at what the kind of the broad spectrum of these organizations look like in our community right now and find out where the Crime Cabinet can add value today. And so not only will I be talking to my colleague, Councilmember Middleton, the new members of the Crime Cabinet from the county, but also plan to, over the next month or two, to reach out to each one of you, either individually or in groups of two and three, to talk probably virtually about where you see the Crime Cabinet going in the years ahead and how we can continue to make a contribution to making our community a safer place. And so I think, in my view, that is the best legacy that we can have for Commissioner Reckow, is to make sure that this body continues to contribute to the safety and well-being of our community. I believe there is still a role for it. We just need to kind of imagine that together, as hard as it is to imagine this group going forward without Commissioner Reckow. I think that's the work ahead, is to imagine that together. And I think that's what we'll be doing. And so obviously you'll be hearing from me in the days and weeks ahead, and look forward to carrying that conversation. And by the way, Ellen, don't think that you're going to be free from getting multiple phone calls from me during this process as I seek to collect the kind of what I'm sure will be very disparate opinions about what can happen with this group. And I certainly hope you'll answer the phone when I call. So that's what I had to say about it. And I know we're pretty far over time, so I didn't want to belabor it too much. But again, appreciate your service, Ellen, and look forward to continuing to rely on your wisdom and experience as we move forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Charlie. Those were really good comments, and I really appreciate the interest in seeing, trying to chart a good path forward. And you know I will be a resource if you need me. Happy to respond and look forward to seeing what develops. So
I'm not above going over to the library to review all your voluminous materials either. I will do what has to be done. I will do the work.
Hopefully the library will open at some point in the near future. People have to see the inside of our gorgeous main library, and they have a much bigger North Carolina room, so I didn't feel badly giving them boxes on boxes of notebooks and files. All right. On that note, I want to thank everyone for your participation today. I think we had a good meeting, and thank all the speakers. And I wish you all well as we continue to navigate the new normal, and hope that there will be healthier months ahead after we get over this hump that we're going through right now. So thank you, and goodbye, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for being with us.
Bye, everybody. God bless you all.